Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. We already touched on, or started to touch on, culture a little bit, and you're right on the money. It's values, how we show up, and not necessarily just that buzzword. And it's something that's been around for a long time. Your experience, it's your fourth year at Paul Quinn, just finished your fourth?
Just finished the fourth year. Yes, sir.
And the turnaround has been incredible. You know, you went from, there was a 7-25 year to you came and then 26-2, like a 19-game turnaround. And then in 21-22, you won a national championship. And so in just a short amount of time, you've been able to do amazing things. And I got to imagine that your standards and pillars of your program are a big part of that. So I'd love for you to share just kind of what those are.
Yeah, I think, everybody talks about like the wins and the losses, a lot more than we should. I think the thing that we try to do here in our program is we talk about, our process. And that process for everybody is different. And so even when it comes from like recruiting a player, the things like in our belief system that we talk about is we talk about proving ourselves right. So that's one. You prove yourself right. So to go back to what I said before, somewhere someone is waiting on you to do what God has called you to do, right? For our players and for us as coaches, we want to prove ourselves right. So we want to do things out of love, not out of hate. And what that means for us is, in this culture and social media and trolls and all this stuff, people talk about like they're haters and that kind of thing. And I want to prove them wrong. Well, we more so want to do things for the people that are supporting us. And we want to prove ourselves right. You have to believe in yourself a certain amount to pursue being a college athlete, because there is a strenuous schedule. You're going to have ups and downs. It's hard. You got to balance, social life, being a student, all the things that go into being a college athlete. And so that's one of the first things that we talk about. We want to be able to prove ourselves right. We want to do things from a positive mindset, do things out of love, and focus on us and not on, the people that are outside of our boat, right? The second thing that we talk about is,
Coach, can I jump in real quick on the after the first one? Because I think that's great. You're choosing more of an optimistic approach to a kid and a player rather than a pessimistic. And I wonder how many coaches, when we have somebody new come to our school, or even somebody that we know maybe has been in some trouble in the past academically with their behavior, whatever, we almost, I don't know if we even realize we're almost waiting for them to screw up again. Like they just have to, they're almost proving to us that, oh yeah, that's what I thought they were really like. Instead of the way you're looking at it is more of an optimistic, like I believe that they're going to, the way we feel or want them to be, that they're actually going to do that. Like they're going to rise to that standard that we've set. And I just think that that's a better way to look at players and their potential than the I'm just ready and waiting for them to screw up mentality.
No, absolutely. And that's part of, the belief system for us. All this is predicated on empowering our players, right? And that's what it turns into at the end. And we'll talk about that here later. But we're recruiting a guy who has had some issues, and we're empowering them and saying, hey, at some of these other places, maybe you didn't play as much as you wanted to, or maybe something happened, or, a falling out with the coaching staff or a coaching change, whatever it may be. But we have a standard here, but your standard for yourself should be higher than what we expect of you. Like this is your life. This is the rest of your life. As coaches, God willing, I'll coach 20 more years. These kids have 4 now, 5 with COVID, and there's no guarantee afterwards that you're going to play this game again at a competitive level. Like, men's leagues and all that when we get old. But and
It's
that's
different.
yeah, that's part of it for these guys. Like they have to understand how special this time in their life is and how things can go really, really well and your trajectory can change. And if you really lock in and buy in during this time, the rest of your life is significantly better. Or you can be the guy at the barbecue, talking about, my coach was a hater and oh, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, and I got recruited by such and such, just it's about controlling that and empowering these guys to know that they actually have more control than they think they do. And so that's why proving yourself right is such a big part of it for us, is because they have to be a little bit crazy to pursue this in the first place. They
Mm.
have to have some kind of support system, right, before they get to us. And then when they get to us, obviously that's us. And then, taking them through these steps. And so that's just the first part. Um, the next part of it for us is love your process. And this one is a big one for us because every individual's process is different.
Yeah.
We can be the same team, we can both be talented and we play different positions, but our process is so different. And part of loving your process is identifying what it is. Like we've got to be able to sit down with a kid and player development, mental health, uh, you know, building a relationship with them, and then saying, hey, this is the process that we're going to work. And we've got a long way to go in this area, but you're a lot further along in this area. And we don't compare them to other players. It's their personal journey, right?
Mm. Yeah.
It's no relationship with themselves and what they have to do. And one of the biggest parts of that, because it's not just goal oriented, right? Is them identifying a part of their process is what is your why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And then when things get hard, we have these conversations and we build these relationships. And when things get hard, we know what their why is, and we're going to pull them to the side and we're allowed to not, I wouldn't say press those buttons, but bring those things up and say, hey, man, we're doing this for a reason. We're close enough to where we can bring those things up. We have that type of relationship. And so as you're working this process and it gets really frustrating and really hard and there's ups and downs, you can always take a step back. You can take a deep breath and then remember, hey, part of my process is this. This is my why. And now it's all starting to kind of make more sense.
If you don't have those conversations with them, sit down and have that meeting, then you might be holding a player accountable or to standards that he doesn't even want or recognize, or maybe his idea or path where he wants to go is completely different than what you think. And I think that's a big piece that you talked about, is having that meeting. And Kelvin Sampson said, if you don't know where you're going, or if you don't know your why, then any road will take you there. I think that there's two sides to that. On the player, they need to know their why, but as coaches, we need to know their why so that we can actually be on the same road with them, or else we could be thinking, yeah, we're moving this direction. It's the exact opposite where that player wants to go. Like you said, with your skill, or even with where they want to be in their life or their careers.
No, absolutely. I agree. And there's been times when players have come back, you know, later on in the season and they're like, hey, coach, I thought this was my why. And it's not. That doesn't make any sense to me now. I thought I wanted to be a pro and I wanted to, they're like, no, I want to do this for my family. I want to go back to my community where I'm the only one who's gone to college. And I want to tell them and share this with them that
Hmm.
it's possible. And that's special, because we have the type of relationship with our guys where, hey, if coaches are making mistakes, speak up. Like we're not perfect either. Like I don't run the type of program, where it's do as I say, not as I do. I'm trying to be a role model to these guys. I have a daughter, I've got a wife, and my parents are around our program.
Hmm.
So they get to see me do it every day. And I think that adds a little bit, another layer to it where, they can understand that, hey, I come from the similar background as you guys, and this is what it's turned into. And I want that for you guys. It's not just about winning a championship. It's not just about, playing basketball, but it's about more than just basketball. And I think, that comes with time when you have your players reaching out to you year after year after you're done coaching them. And
How do you handle how do you handle that question or that moment? Because like at the high school level, early on in players' careers, playing college basketball sounds really good. And it sounds like everybody's doing it, everybody wants to do it, and that it's not that hard. And then I've seen maybe sometimes during their senior year, when they're really starting to look for like a year from now, am I going to be a college player? They realize whether they want to truly put in that time or not, that how hard that grind is. And so sometimes they come up to me and I almost feel like they're not ashamed, but a little worried about how I'll react or how I'll, like, if they've been preaching, I want to play, or saying I want to play college basketball. And all of a sudden, you know what? I just don't think that's the path I want to go. I've never reacted badly to that, but I felt that hesitancy from them. How do you feel or react when here's the plan that you and that player had? You thought you're on the same page and moving the same direction. Something changes in their life. How do you deal with that?
I think as our players, we've been fortunate enough to have in our 4 years here, we played three because obviously we didn't play 1 year because of COVID, but we've had three guys play pro basketball uh, in those 4 years, and that's a big deal because it means that one, they're prepared, two, they're talented enough, and then how long they stick. There's a lot of different variables to all
Yeah.
that, right? They're younger rookie jobs and they're going to have to work through some of those things. But it's a testament to how hard these guys work. And, when a player comes to you and has a change of heart, right? My job is not to judge that change of heart. It's to listen and figure out where it's coming from. I've had guys that, have kids and they're like, hey, coach, I want to be here with my family. I want to try to find something here, or I want to be a coach. What do you think? I've had those type of questions. And then, the other guys who didn't know if they wanted to play or pursue pro basketball afterwards, they're gung ho about it now. And they're like, coach, it's all or nothing. I need workouts. I need to figure it out. Like, can you train me? You coached in the G League. Should I go try out for the Texas Legends? And it's like, hey, listen, all this, it's like starting over from high school to college. It's the same thing. You go from being hero to zero, and you've got to figure out the right path for you. And then it goes back to that process. Your process is going to be different coming from a small college. So you're going to be up against Division I players who maybe didn't play, but they were at the Division I level.
Yeah.
And you're a guy who's all conference and average to double double. There's a market for you, 100%. Now we just got to make the right connections and reach out to some agents. Every year, for my seniors, I bring in a couple of guys, from Mexico, and a guy who has connections in Mexico played there. Other agents with small market connections, and they get a chance to evaluate my guys, and then they'll come back with feedback, and then I'll pass it along to them and say, hey, look, this is what they're telling me.
Golly, that's valuable right there.
And so now that dream that you were chasing becomes more of a reality. And so that's kind of what I see. My job is one, we got to prepare them, in more ways than one, not just basketball to be a pro, because there's a lot of pitfalls in that world. But then as we get closer and we start to narrow things down, career wise, whether it's basketball or in the corporate workplace, being able to help these guys with relationships, always being somebody they can use as a reference, and then just being there as an ear that they can count on to talk to and share with. I think that's part of the relationship bit as well.
What other pillars do you have, just to kind of circle back to the culture piece?
The last part is stay different, and so you believe in yourself. You prove yourself right. You figure out kind of what your circle is and what your why. You love your process. You figure out what it is. You work that process. You eliminate those distractions, and at some point, when you're loving your process, you become different. Right? You become a better version of yourself. Maybe not the best version of yourself yet, but a better version of yourself. And our goal is once you become different, you stay different. And that's, I mean, that's across the board. That's as a human being, that's as a teammate, that's as, a basketball player, that's as a son, that's as a, some of my guys have kids, that as a father, we want these guys to have a better life when they leave our place. And so what's the point of doing all this work and making all these changes and being a better version of yourself just to revert back to all your old habits? And so that last piece to me, once we get you there, we have built in a certain amount of equity, all of us together. We want you to maintain that level. And no, it doesn't mean you're going to have a six pack for the rest of your life, right? I'm meaning more, I'm meaning more like, the quality of life and the things that you believe in, and how hard it is being a man and trying to navigate that space, being a young adult in this social media world, and instant gratification and all those things. We preach these things to our guys. Don't get lost in the moment where you can throw things away that you've worked so hard to build over a long period of time. And staying different to us, it means, and I talked about it earlier, when they go back to wherever they came from, right? Whatever neighborhood, whatever city, whatever that is, people can tell that they are different. They've matured, they've grown, and they're not just going to fall for anything. We talk about everything. We're open with our players. I'm honest with my guys. I talk about my family. I talk about my marriage. I talk about being a dad. My brother is my assistant coach. And so, sometimes that can strain our relationship because we work every day. And then he was my assistant coach at Drive Nation, that means this year, but opening the door to those conversations about life and about struggles and about, vices and stuff like that, it really allows them to open themselves up. And so when they have an issue, we can talk about it and they don't feel judged.
Yeah.
And as we're working through the accountability process, we talk about not looking back, because once there's no going back now. You've changed, you're different. I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't want to hear oh, I didn't know or anything like that. And you got to be better. And so I think those, that belief system for our program has really worked. It works in recruiting because we're explaining to our guys when they get here, they don't have to be fully baked. We're going to work with you. We're going to coach you. We're going to invest in you. And, at the end of the day, the only way that we can live and operate is by doing the work.
Yeah.
The success, but there's no way you're going to have success without it. And I think our players over the time that we've been here at Paul Quinn have really bought into that, and they believe in it 100%.
And those principles, they're great for basketball, but they're really transformational for their lives. What kind of pressure? And I think that word pressure is not bad. What kind of pressure do you feel to live up to those standards yourself? Because I've kind of heard you say that throughout, but I wonder how many coaches, like, excellence is one of our culture pieces, and there's some things underneath that. But excellence, it's not perfection, but it's a standard that we're trying to live up to and do. But I mean, I think about the times of my life, even now, where I'm not excellent, and I wonder if that's a message that I'm sending my players that is confusing. So what kind of pressure do you feel to live up to those standards that you've set for your program?
I think for me, it's about, you talk about like capacity, you talk about bandwidth, you talk about balance. I think that in order for me to be able to coach these guys the way that I do, I have to have the capacity to be able to do all of these things and do them wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I can't tell my players, hey, don't be out here doing, crazy stuff, and I'm doing crazy stuff. Like, it just doesn't work. I can't tell my player, hey man, I know you're talking to, these two girls, you need to settle down and you need to find the one that's good for you and one that's going to help you if I'm not doing that. Right. And so I think, one, you have to be who you are. Like you can't just tell these guys, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, but you have to show them. And so, I mean, we talked about it. Like my daughter is around the program. My wife is around the program, my family, my friends, like obviously my brother, he's an assistant coach. They're around the program. And so I don't just talk about it. I'm actively living it in front of them. And so if I'm not living my life right, and I'm not doing the things that I think I should be doing, I would not have the capacity to be able to pour and invest in these guys the way that I feel that I should. And we'll take players that have had an issue, right? Like certain things, obviously, we're not gonna accept. But a player who's had a great issue here or there and has worked hard to get back eligible, right? We'll take those type of guys because we're not here trying to throw kids away after they've made a mistake. Hey, you've worked through it. I made mistakes as a player. I made mistakes as a coach. We're never going to be that type of program where we're like holier than now and we don't make mistakes and that type of deal. But if I can't, if I can't be genuine in the things that I'm asking of them because I know that I'm not doing them myself, then your players sniff that out. I mean, 100%, they sniff out the guys that are fraud, the guys that are fake. I've been around people that players just can't stand them. It's not that they don't respect them as a coach. It's more so that they don't respect them as a person. And it turns into like mental warfare, and so I think that the biggest thing for me is we talked about like, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to pour into you. I'm going to live my life right and try to have as much balance as I can so that when things go wrong as a head coach, because it's day to day, I've got my finger on the pulse of 23 guys, right? Or however, assistant coaches as well, administrate. Like when something goes wrong, I have to have the capacity to be able to balance my personal life and being a dad and being a son and a brother and manage my players and help them the absolute best way that I can. And if I don't have that balance and I don't have that capacity, then any little thing can throw your program in disarray. And I just don't believe in that, So I try really, really, really hard to make sure that I'm doing things correctly and living by what I'm talking to my players about so that when it comes time to correct them, there's no fake, there's no fraud. It's 100% genuine and we're doing things with intention.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.